Hey everyone, and welcome to the Joomla Shack conference. In this session, I am delighted to welcome Parth as a repeat speaker. Last year, he talked about some of the really big projects that he was doing with Tech Joomla and TechD. In this session, he's going to talk about some of the how. How did he get it done? One of the problems with Joomla is that some of the solutions are a little piecemeal. There may be some things which are supported by notifications, some things which are supported by the REST API, but often the solutions have to be cobbled together because a lot of features aren't fully integrated into all parts of Joomla, and particularly when you add on third-party extensions. And so Parth is here to talk about how he's able to build a more robust stack using Joomla for some of these really large projects that his company are involved in. Parth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that introduction. And it's really great to be back. I think you guys are doing a great job in trying to fill the gap that has been left due to COVID. No events in Joomla this year. So I think you should give yourself a pat on the back for making sure that, something keeps happening in the Joomla space while we wait for Corona to get over and physical events to start again. So thank you so much for making this happen. And it's really great to be back here to talk at this session. So, hi everyone. So today, what I'm doing is the plan is to talk about horizontal or infrastructure extensions, which lead to less duplication and more innovation. Of course, I'll explain what horizontal and infrastructure extensions are. For those of you who were involved in the early discussions on how Joomla 4 or Joomla X and all these things will shape, and even in the early discussions about how Joomla 3 would take shape, that's where I think I heard this expression discussed in some of the leadership meetings inside Joomla. I haven't seen it being used too much later, but definitely have these extensions are a part of Joomla right now, and they really help us. And we thought that why can't we extend it to add more functionality to Joomla that's available for everyone else to use. So let's get started. I'll just start with a quick introduction. So I'm Parth Lawate. You can follow me on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle on there, and you can also see my email address. I'm the CEO at Tech Joomla and TechD Technologies. We have also been very closely involved with the Joomla community back here in India. I'm one of the co-founders of the Joomla user group in Pune, and also the organizer for Joomla Day India, which hasn't happened in the last couple of years, but we hope to make it happen again soon, as soon as Corona allows us, or we might just do an online version. No plans out yet, but very deep roots with the Joomla community. We go back to the Mambo days. That's when we started working with Joomla. So that's just a quick story for me with Joomla. So I started out working with static websites back in 2005, 6, or maybe even a little earlier, when we were working for some nonprofits and some side freelance work that I was doing while I was still a student. I moved on to, creating some of my own web portals on Joomla, eventually getting into system integration, custom development. And today we have a set of businesses that are doing Joomla as well as other custom development. And we're also heavily involved in cloud, enterprise, as well as mobile applications. So it's been a very organic journey, learning all these technologies and being able to offer them as services to our customers. That's also given us a lot of insight as to how Joomla works and how we can make it work better for all of us. So that's just a quick background about me. So talking about TechD, so I started this company along with Ashwin, my co-founder, back in 2006. We've been working with Joomla before it became Joomla. So we were already working with Mambo back then when TechD was formed. And Mambo was very exciting. I mean, if you look back at how websites were built back then, having application of something that runs on the web where you just install a zip file and that gives you big functionality installed, a forum just there. It was cutting edge stuff. With PHP Nuke, I remember going to cyber cafes. So back then we didn't have great internet at home. So you had to go to this like a cafe where they had these computers where you could sit and do whatever you wanted. So we used to carry around code on a floppy disk and take it to a cyber cafe to deploy. And it was like the code deployment basically meant pasting bits of code in 100 different places in 200 different files to actually get some functionality put into a CMS back then, which was something like a PHP Nuke. So at that point, getting to know what Mambo did was like really earth shattering, and I mean, in a good way. for us, and that got us hooked. That got us hooked into Mambo. That got us onto the Joomla bandwagon as well, and we have been with it ever since. It's something that we started with, and is also a very important part of what we do today. Though we have expanded into many other technologies now, it's still very close to our hearts, and we do a lot of work on it. And some of our biggest projects have been developed using Joomla as a base. So, like Ashwin talked in the earlier session, Aadhaar, which is India's identity program, we have worked on that, and Joomla was used as a base for that. Some of the biggest projects in education in India are also using Joomla as a base for some of the work that we're doing there. So we've been very lucky to be able to use Joomla at a very different scale and in a very different way. And having clients across the globe has also given us the broader vision to be able to deliver something that is a broader product on top of Joomla, whether it's deployed on the cloud or whether it's a curated project for a customer. Joomla is really great for enterprise. It's really great for creating things that need curation. If something off the shelf doesn't work for you, Joomla is a really great base to build something on. So that's just a quick introduction of TechD. Tech Joomla we started back in 2009 when we saw that there was a good market for products in the Joomla space. So we were already doing some websites and some custom development with Joomla back then, and that's when the product big bug kind of bit us. We have always wanted to do products, and Joomla felt like a great space to work with. And over the years, we have probably got out 100 plus products, both free and paid. Some of them are available on our GitHub. Some of them are on the Joomla extensions directory. You might know some of the more popular ones like the Shika LMS, JGive, which is a crowdfunding and donations platform, Quick to Cart, which is a full-blown e-commerce marketplace, JTicketing, which is a event management marketplace. So see, these are some of our popular extensions. So these, what I would call as vertical extensions. Besides these, we have a lot of open source contributions, which include the REST API for Joomla. There is a common payments API for Joomla, as well as a lot of horizontal extensions, which I'm going to be talking about today. So let's really understand what a horizontal extension is, and then if there are horizontal extensions, there have to be vertical extensions, right? So the way I'd like to kind of differentiate them would be that horizontal extensions, or infrastructure extensions, as I like to call them, they kind of provide the base for vertical extensions to build on. Vertical extensions have a specific purpose. For example, if you have an e-commerce extension like a Quick to Cart or a J2 Store or a Virtumart, its purpose is to let you create products and sell those products, have e-commerce workflows on it. Or if you have something like a LMS like Shika, then the purpose is to let you create courses and lessons and manage, enroll users onto it, sell courses and whatnot. So they are very specific and they have a very specific purpose. The job of horizontal extensions is to provide a base so that vertical extensions don't have to keep doing the same thing again. They don't have to rebuild things that can be provided by horizontal extensions. So to give you some examples of horizontal extensions, like I said, Joomla already ships some horizontal extensions in core. And that's why, in fact, I look at Joomla as a collection of horizontal extensions. So if you look at what I have here, you'll see that how is Joomla built up, right? So it's a collection of libraries with some core components, modules, plugins, and templates. And even in these components, I would differentiate them as horizontal and vertical extensions. So if you look at something like users and access control, categories, tags, fields, menus, languages, search, versions, the media management tool, these I see as the infrastructure extensions. For the core Joomla product, I think content or articles is its real main vertical extension because it's a core CMS. And what articles actually builds on is that it can use all these horizontals. So as a content management system, that what the core of content is, it can just build on and use tags and categories and fields and build on that. But these horizontal extensions are not limited to just articles, right? Even contacts can use it, news feeds can use it. So though contacts and news feeds are not used that much, but what they prove that you can have these horizontal extensions and you can use them in these vertical use cases. And we have kind of extended this same thing that Joomla has had for all this while. And this is how most extension developers will also look at, reusing categories, unless they have a very specific use case where they need to build their own. Generally, I always feel that it's a good idea to reuse what is available here. I think generally everybody does end up using users and access control when they're building their extensions, but depending on how they're building things, they might not use the other horizontals. But I believe that, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. As far as possible, you want to look at reusing your code and avoid, reinventing the wheel whenever you can. So Typically, what I've seen is that in order to build these kind of infrastructure extensions, what's very important is that you need to inculcate a product first mindset in your entire thought process of development. So even if you're developing something for a customer, you have to start thinking, can I actually build this in a way that more people can use it? Or do I need to build it only for this customer? So generally at Tekdi and TechJoomla, we have this very strong open source core. I mean, it's so core for us that contributing to open source is a KPI for the 75 plus team that we have across India, which means that everybody every month has to make some kind of a contribution, however small it may be. And it's a key performance indicator for them. So it's very ingrained in our culture that we have to think that we will build for more and not just for a single use case, and that creates this product first mindset. So point of this cartoon is that you have to have your eyes open if you have to build if you have to reuse code, if you have to build infrastructure extensions. If you're too busy delivering the single client delivery, you won't be able to actually bring the efficiencies that that project would probably bring to your other clients or your other product customers. So I think this culture has helped us achieve massive efficiencies when we are delivering large projects. And it has also got us a lot of product features, which we only build once. We don't actually keep building them for our other products. So when I show you some examples, I think this will become a little more clear. So, I mean, even in Joomla, you can kind of think of that example, right? That if every component was rebuilding categories and tags and fields and not reusing these, building of articles or contacts on news feeds would have become 3 times more complicated and much more harder to build and maintain. But now, because we have these infra extensions, the com content maintainers don't have to really worry too much about categories and tags and fields. They're maintained on their own, or at least the maintenance of those can be kind of a shared exercise, and they are not only on top of one vertical extension. So there is a lot of benefit in building like this. So as we say, common code just makes sense. If you don't create common code, or if you don't use common code, you are kind of losing that opportunity. And I think every project you get is an opportunity to either use common code or improve common code, because otherwise you're going to be ending up maintaining more code and have less time for innovation. So having said that, when do you build infrastructure extensions? So I would say you have to do it at every possible opportunity. You have to look at every project, whether it's a small website or a big portal that you need to build or some custom cloud application you're building. You have to look at creating code that is reusable. And when I say infrastructure extensions, this doesn't only apply to Joomla, but whatever you are building in the software space, if you can build it in such a way that you create some infrastructure IP that can be reused across projects, I'm sure your clients will, of course, unless you're building for a very specific IP protected contract. If you're building in the open source world, this definitely makes a lot of sense, that every project is an opportunity where you create some infrastructure that can benefit not just that project and its future maintenance, but also everybody else will be able to actually use that code. So how do we do this? So generally, if you look at on the left hand side, so this is what we call as the spirit of open source. And I typically talk about this at a lot of open source conferences. So we call this as a contribution as a strategy for growth and innovation. So if you have contribution as a growth strategy for your company, this can really help you in a big way. So here, this is a typical process that you would follow in analyzing and executing a project, where you will do some requirement gathering, you will do some solution architecture. You convert that into a technical plan where you will decide how you're going to code, what extensions you're going to use, what custom stuff you'll build, what modifications you'll do, what overrides you'll do, and so on, specifically talking about Joomla. That's where you actually design it in such a way that most of that coding, can some of that be a core Joomla contribution? Can it be a new library you can contribute to Joomla? Can it be a contribution to one of the extensions you're doing? Because remember, if you create a hack in an extension or even a plugin on top of an extension, it means that you have to maintain that in the long run. So if something is useful for that extension, and if your client is okay contributing that back to the code base, that's less maintenance for you and less cost for the customer in the longer run. So basically, it's about keeping the project specific code as thin as you can. And when you do that, in the longer run, you will have more time to innovate. You'll have more time to create new things. And what you see on the left is this is how any project gets built, right? So on at the bottom is of the pyramid is the common knowledge and standards. Then you'll have the server stack, and then you'll have the Joomla core platform and content management system and so on. So you have to kind of decide where you will contribute very early, And if you plan it like this, it will not actually add a lot of overhead on your projects. It will probably help you deliver maybe at the same effort and cost as delivering it as you normally would. But if you design it like this, definitely the cost savings in the long run are really immense. So let's talk about these horizontal building blocks, which help you reduce code and increase development efficiency. So I've already talked about what Joomla has, right? So things like COM categories. So for example, all our extensions use COM categories, COM tags, COM fields. Initially, we were maintaining our own field system called as TJ fields. We still use it in some extensions, but now we have baked in support for Joomla core fields because now we know that the core Joomla team is maintaining it. So in the longer run, the plan would be to support Joomla fields in all our extensions. Our own field system will probably deprecate in the long run. Of course, we'll give a migration path and everything. But the idea is that now that somebody has built it, I mean, in hindsight, would have been great if we had time to contribute our TJ field system to the Joomla core. Then probably our time would have been less to migrate things over. Nevertheless, now we have a pretty awesome system. And if you've watched Ashwin's session earlier, the field system is extremely flexible. The entire Aadhaar site was built on top of fields and layouts. It helped us avoid 10 custom extensions. So it's a very powerful system inside Joomla, the field system. And that's a great horizontal extension, I would say, that is helping a lot of extension developers on top, if they choose to use it, of course. So let's look at some of the horizontal extensions that we've built in TechJoomla. A lot of those, I mean, almost all of those are actually available on our GitHub. So if you go to github.com/TechJoomla, if you look at our repositories, most of the things that you're going to see in today's session, they're out there. The code is there for you to fork, use, and contribute to. So I will, invite everyone in this session and everybody who will listen later on YouTube to definitely check this out and see if you can adopt these and contribute to this. So let's start with the first one. So this is an extension called as TJ report. So this is a reporting extension. This powers all the reporting in all our extensions. It comes with a few cool features. We are continuously improving this as well. So today, this is already offering a lot of interesting features that are used. So you can use it with any extension. You can just pass a client to it so that you can see reports for your own extension. So this can become a menu and stay silently on the background behind your extension. So just like you pass your client to your COM categories, you can pass your extensions, namespace to the custom to the reporting engine, and the reporting engine will filter out to show only those reports. You can package with your own extensions and distribute it. The reports themselves can be customized. So each report is a plugin, and what we have is a layer on top that lets you save the queries. So the report queries can be saved. The reports can be customized by configuring the reports in different ways. The data plugins let you deliver multiple reports. It supports ownership and hierarchy context and access control. So you can even create. So the way this reporting engine works is that each plugin can be configured in multiple ways. So let's say a full data set is accessible only to super admins, but a part of that data set is available only to a certain user group. So you can create instances of that report and create access control layers there. So a very great way to kind of give layered access to your to people in the organization. And again, of course, these reports are available on the front end and back end. So if you've looked at any of our extensions, JTicketing, JGave, Shika, everywhere these are used. These are powering, for example, in Shika, manager reports. So that's where the hierarchy context is used. So if you set up your management hierarchy in the COM hierarchy extension, which is another horizontal, the reporting extension will recognize that, and managers will be able to get access to reports of their people who are reporting to them, or mentors, for example. Similarly, teacher reports. So it also understands ownership. So a teacher in Shika can see reports of their own students, or in case of JTicketing or JGave, a campaign owner or an event owner can see reports of their own, the things that they own. So that's the teacher or owner context. And then there is access control, where you can slice and dice and give access as required. What's also very interesting, and a recent development that I didn't get a chance to create a slide for, is that it has a REST API. And recently, in the last year, we have also created a Google Data Studio connector to this reporting engine, which means that any report you can pull into Google Data Studio, and practically by the same concept, you could also pull it into something like a Microsoft BI, and then use those BI tools to actually do interactive reports on top of it. So like visualizations. And we are using this very extensively now by doing all this. So that's another very interesting way to give data to your customers have a very interesting way to drill down deep into your data and get customized reports. And then by connecting a BI tool like Google Data Studio or visualization tool, you can also have interactive reports on top. So one more thing is that this is GDPR compliant. Any data that you're actually getting out of the reporting engine in the plugin, you can flag some of the data points as personally identifiable information. And there is a specific ownership context. There is a access level context that you can set so that some of your people cannot see the PII data. So the PII data can be hidden selectively by using this tool. So now you'll see that we built this reporting engine once, and now we are using it in all our extensions, and we are using it on all the custom projects that we deliver. So through this, we are able to save a ton of time, and it also actually helps us save training time. That nobody needs to actually think of building their own reporting layer. It comes. Nobody has to build on CSV exports again. Nobody has to build save queries again. So all of that is inbuilt. All you have to do is write a data plugin, and the report will become available. So where we were spending probably 3x the time, now we are probably doing it less than 1/3 the time, or maybe even lesser, because all you have to write is a data plugin, and that's pretty simple. And we are doing some extensive improvements to this. You can expect more releases of this engine to come, which will make it even more powerful. It's a free product available on our GitHub. So if you want to adopt this in your next extension or project, please feel free. We are there to support you. You can add your issues on GitHub, and we'll help you out. So that is TJ reports. Just a few screenshots up here. So you'll see that this is an example report. You can hide and show columns. You can save the query. You can do a CSV export. It's got pagination, obviously. And as I said, REST APIs and everything. So you can also jump between different reports. So typically there'll be a selector here if there are multiple reports configured. The next extension I'm going to talk about is COM API, probably one of our oldest contributions to the Joomla open source ecosystem, still very relevant. It is used extensively in the Joomla space where people want to expose data from the Joomla site out, whether it is for mobile app development or whether it is consuming data in other website or other applications. It is used extensively. We use it ourselves for a lot of our mobile applications and data mashups. So what it supports is that it can extend to any Joomla extension. It supports token-based authentication. It has APIs, some core APIs already bundled with it, like Joomla users, categories, content. And you can also find a lot of plugins for third-party extensions that we have built on as APIs, and that's available on our GitHub. And as I said, this is in production use for several years now in a lot of enterprise projects. I think I was speaking in Rome, Italy, when somebody came up with a very interesting use case of what they had done with COM API. So this gentleman, he had built a project where they were using COM API to run as the backend for police dogs, the sniffer dogs. So this dogs had some kind of a radio collar, which was actually pushing data to COM API about their current location, and then they were using some kind of a geo map to plot where the dogs were in real time. So very interesting use cases of this out there. I mean, we could have a full session on COM API probably and what people have done with it, but probably one of our most interesting extensions with a lot of interesting use cases. Ashwin, if you're back, you want to kind of add to this, please feel free in terms of use cases.
Yes, so a few things to add here is that in terms of features, I mean, there's a bunch of more features now. So for example, we support impersonation, we support JWT. So it's definitely improved, continues to improve. And also we now have Angular SDK. So if you're integrating this API with either Ionic apps, or if you're integrating that with web-based Angular apps, then you can simply use the module on NPM and integrate very easily with the login and user creation mechanisms that COM API supports. The link is not here, but I'll type the link out in the chat in a few minutes. And to add to this, we are also extending COM API. I mean, it won't be COM API, but it's going to be a new extension that we are creating. It's called TJ Login, which will further kind of enhance the authentication aspect of COM API and Joomla, and give it things like phone numbers and activate account using a one-time password and those kind of things. So that is also due to come out in the next couple of weeks.
Hey, Parth, Ashwin, this might be a good time for this question from Daweed in the audience. Do you have any examples of mobile apps that you've built using COM API?
Yeah, I was about to actually put the links out on chat, but Parth, maybe if you want to just open the Play Store links, or maybe I just jump to the. So there's a bunch of apps. We have app for JTicketing, which is our extension. So the JTicketing app uses COM APIs. It has a bunch of features like looking at events, looking at what kind of orders have come in for events, and it also allows a QR code scanner to scan a QR code on your ticket and check in the attendees. So that's the JTicketing app. We also have an app for Easy Blog, which lets users browse the blogs, read the blogs, and also add new blogs. So we also have a we also have a SaaS-based offering on top of Shika called Vowel. Even the Vowel app is a good example. It's again built on top of built using Ionic framework.
Yes.
So all these, David, all these apps that I just talked about, all these are Ionic framework apps. I'm not sure what. So you asked, David, you asked example of mobile apps with COM API, please, which I just talked about, and then you mentioned, is it Ionic, Angular, or Firebase? So we don't use Firebase really. We of course use FCM for the push notifications, Firebase, the Firebase cloud messaging, but the app itself is Ionic framework.
Yeah. So these apps you can find on the Play Store. Maybe Ashwin, you can also post a few links on the chat and you can check them out. You can also search for them on the Play Store. You'll get them. Most of these are for iOS and Android both, so you can find them there. And some customer apps that we can't really share publicly as they're under NDAs. But this has been pretty successful in that sense, because anywhere where you need to build any kind of a alternative JavaScript front end on top of Joomla, whether it's a mobile app or a web application, so in both cases the APIs would be very useful. In fact, probably Ashwin, you can also share a link of Oceans. So this is something we have talked about in the earlier session, so I won't last year's session, in fact, so I won't go in detail of that. But this is a application that was originally built purely in Joomla, but later on the backend was kept Joomla, but front end was converted to Angular. So that is also a very good example of the REST API use case. Ashwin will post a link to it. You can also experience it. So coming to this one, probably Oceans I could show in a quick thing. Let me just quickly show that. So this is the one I was talking about. So this is not a mobile application. It's an alternative front end. I mean, it's like a JavaScript application that is using REST APIs on the back. And it also uses, for search, we are using a search indexer. It's not a native Joomla search.
So you can just click on the knowledge base link path and start browsing.
Sure, I can.
Yeah, so this is basically what we see over here is an Angular front end, and if you briefly show the console path, you'll be able to show that there is API calls being made. So all of this front end is built in Angular, and all the data comes from APIs that we have built on top of Joomla. So like Parth said, initially this was a project that was using Zoo, and it was a full Joomla site. But later we realized that it might be a good idea to build a separate independent Angular-based front end to make it more slick and quicker, and use Joomla only for the API. So we kind of built the API layer on in the site, created all the APIs for Zoo. We also have APIs for menus. So the About Us knowledge-based menus that you see right now, they're coming from the menu API. And all the data that you see here comes from either the API or it is coming from Algolia. So we also have a horizontal extension. Again, that one is more of a, it's not out there public on our GitHub yet, but it lets you index all your content from Joomla into, we currently support Algolia and Elasticsearch as two destinations. You can actually index your content into one of those two databases. So on the front end, all of the data is coming from either the API or the Algolia search provider, but the front end is all Angular.
So that was one use case, which is not a mobile app. I just wanted to show that quickly so that you can see where all you can use it. So the next one that I have here is the hierarchy management system. So this is typically used in enterprises where you need to manage user hierarchy relationships, as in who is the manager of whom, and or in a coaching or training situation, it could be like a situation where you are managing mentors or coaches for users. So what this lets you do is set organization hierarchies. You can also have context specific hierarchies. So you can say that, he's a manager for this person, but only in this context. But overall, maybe there is some other manager. So you can do overall or context full hierarchies. Then there is also a basis for access control there. So by virtue of somebody being a manager or a mentor, they can be given access to certain things. And right now, this integrates with TJ reports. It supports REST APIs, and it also supports with one more horizontal extension we have, which is called role-based access control, where if you want to give access control where Joomla is a little limiting, you want to use something else, then there is the role-based ACL system, which also provides additional layers of access control here. So that's hierarchy management. So this is an example of the hierarchy tool in action. This is, of course, just the hierarchy setup. The actual use of this would happen in various horizontal extensions. For example, in Shika, it is serving as a mentor or manager management tool. Same thing with J-ticketing, where reports are given. So these managers are given the access to reports, and they are also able to assign content to people under them. So that's how it is used in the vertical extensions. So the other extension we have here, again, this is a little more technical. And while it is there on our GitHub, I don't think we have any use cases outside of what we internally use, but it's very interesting. I mean, typically what we found is that when you are doing true role-based ACL in Joomla, it makes, while it is possible to do, it's very complicated. I mean, imagine a situation where you want to create, so let's say every year you are introducing 4 new groups of people, and each group needs a manager, for example, and each group needs a mentor. So what you have to basically do is that while you can do it, it means that you probably have to create 8 to 12 different user groups every year, and this keeps going on and on. Whereas with role-based ACL, you can actually set roles on a context. So you can say that Parth is a manager for managing products in Quick to Cut, whereas Steve is having access to maybe manage the promotions in Quick to Cut, and that's it. I mean, and these could also be set on a vendor level. So you can using role-based ACL, you can actually simplify the role mapping in a big way. We are mainly using it in scenarios. So we have a very interesting project in the UK where we are using this to build some tools for schools. So we have a customer there called Data Protection Education. They are a GDPR service organization, and they provide tools for schools to manage their data and help schools stay compliant with GDPR. So this has been used along with one more horizontal extension called Com Agencies to actually create ACL within Joomla. So imagine a situation where you have the Joomla set, and inside the Joomla set you have 200 or 300 schools who are logging in, and each school has their own managers and staff, and they are all managing this on their own using the access control system that we have built. So doing this in Joomla ACL is possible, but it makes it very complicated. It will mean in this case probably 300 student groups, 300 school groups for staff, and 300 school groups for 300 managers. So 600 groups to implement this. Right now, this is done with just 2 roles and an entity called as a school, which is managed in the agency system. And this makes it super simple. And then the access control right now in our own extensions, it's an access-free, hack-free implementation. But if you want to implement it in Joomla 4, it needs a small hack because right now there is no way to actually circumvent the Joomla access control. But in Joomla 4, probably it might be possible. We haven't explored it yet. But this is very powerful, used in almost all our enterprise implementations. Might take a little understanding to get, but once you get it, it's extremely powerful. So one more extension, which is a lightweight CCK that we have based on the concept of UCM in Joomla. This is again more internal. Originally, this was built on TJ fields. There is a plan to migrate this completely to Joomla fields. Very interesting. This is used in a lot of our projects. It is used as a form builder. It is used for any kind of a project that needs forms and typical CCK stuff. The good thing about this is that there are no core fields. So every type that you create can start with 0 fields. Typically, most CCKs, not all of them, but some CCKs at least have this negative that you at least have to have a title and description. But in this case, you can actually choose which, if you have a core field, and you can actually choose which one that is. And that gives you some flexibility. You can have any number of content types. Each content type can have its own category tree. It supports a lot of field types, list views, detail views. There is a flexible TJ reports adapter that comes with it, and it has got an Ajax draft saving, which means we will auto save the drafts. So very good, especially if you're doing very long forms. So in some projects, we've used it as a base to create systems which are like forms, which are like 30, 40, 60 fields across multiple pages. Stuff like you get with those visa forms, right? Very long forms that it needs auto saving. So very powerful again. Again, a little more internal right now. It is out there on GitHub. Has been used by some people in the Joomla community. But I would definitely ask you to explore this. And as I said, right now we are using Joomla fields here, TJ fields here, but the plan is to migrate or rather give an option to choose either TJ fields or Joomla fields in the future. Another very interesting thing, and we had really hoped that we would be able to get this into the Joomla core. We had also made an RFC for it, but we could not find the time to actually push the code. And now Joomla has a sort of notifications engine in Joomla 4, which was built by Hannes. But I think today, as of today, at least what we have with the TJ notification system is a little more powerful than what Joomla has in core. So we'll still maintain this, but the goal would be that at some point we probably push all these features to the Joomla core, if the Joomla core will accept it, which I'm not sure it will, because this has got way more complicated than what Joomla will want in core. So what this lets you do is that this is a global multi-channel notification system. Right now, all our Joomla extensions use this. It lets you do email notifications, SMS notifications, WhatsApp notifications, as well as web push notifications. Mobile push is also coming very soon. So typically, when you're building any kind of an extension, notifications are very critical, right? And by default, typically email was what was enough in most cases. So typically what Joomla 4 has effectively right now is like a global email template manager where you can edit the content of any email that is going on. And hopefully more extensions will also adopt it so that they also get the feature. So right now, this is a typical classic case where extension developers have built their own systems. And probably most of the popular extension developers that I know have their own notification system where they manage their own email templates in their own way. What we have done is created a system which can be actually shared by everyone, used by everyone if they want to send out email notifications. It is multilingual. You can actually create a JSON object and install this notification system along with your extension, and also pre-populate all the email notifications or SMS notifications that you have when you install. The benefit that gives you is that the administrator has full control on the notification content. They can change the content. They can override the content on a user level as well, or on specific scenarios. You can have the control as an end user, which notifications you want to receive or not. And as an admin, you can choose which notifications are core versus which can be enabled and disabled. And the integration is like really easy. Instead of using the normal Joomla email sending method, you can use the magic method that we have, and you'll get this integrated in a couple of days in your extensions at the most. And once you have it integrated, you have the benefit that you'll get all these features, rich features to your users. So like I said, we use it in all our extensions as well as most of the projects that we deliver. This is definitely something I would really encourage the Joomla community to take up. There is a lot to do here, and this really makes it much easier for people across the world. For example, in India, we did some very interesting projects where the users did not have email. They just had a mobile number. And without an email address, how do we communicate with them? So that's where the other extension that Ashwin talked about earlier, TJ Login, that is also something that we will be launching soon. So that allows you to register on Joomla without an email address with just a mobile number and an OTP password. And that's also the reason SMS notifications were important, because now with countries like India and Africa actually jumping onto the internet without an email address, probably unthinkable a few years ago, but now it's a very, very true situation. Most of the people who have come on the internet from rural areas today don't have an email address. They directly come to it, they just start using applications with their mobile, and they're just using native applications, and then they're browsing online. Any website that asks them for an email address is actually pushing them away. So this is a big, big opportunity for Joomla to kind of embrace this new rush of users coming to the internet and being able to serve those users. So I think between this SMS notification system and the login extension that we are releasing, we hope that we kind of open our doors for these communities to come to Joomla and use that as the base for their applications. So a few screenshots here. This is how, again, this is the kind of magic method where you can actually use that to send your notifications. Again, TJ notifications can be a very silent extension in your system. People don't need to know you're using TJ notifications. You can, again, just pass the key and only your notifications will show up. You can manage the title, the key, and again, email, SMS, whatever notifications you have, they will show up here. It understands the client level context and also vendor level context if you're using that. And you can use and define your own replacement tags as you want. So this is an older screenshot. As I said, the newer version supports SMS and push and WhatsApp as well. So you can download this extension from our GitHub and try it out. So this is how you define the content. So yeah, so I think I'll just rush a little probably, Steve. I see we are at 4:15, so we probably don't have a lot of time. So I'm just going to quickly run through this and we can do some questions. So another extension that we have is very interesting. Just like TJ reports lets you do text reports or detailed reports, TJ dashboards is an extension for creating user configurable dashboards. So any extension can define and install its own dashboards into the system. It can have multiple widgets. Admins can control the configuration and users can customize. So out of this, the user customization is still in progress. Everything else is possible right now. Again, most of our dashboards and all our extensions are powered by DJ Dashboard. So just some examples here. So the way this works is that so we have two types of, flexibility here. One is the data source flexibility, and then there are layouts. So you can define layouts and data sources, and you can actually map the data source to multiple layouts. So for example, this is what the big visualization tools like Data Studio do. That's what we have brought inside Joomla. That depending on the data type, you will have a certain way to show it. So some things you will just show as integers. In some cases, you will represent it as graphs. So you have all that flexibility to define. Again, same thing as TJ reports. You have a lot of configuration available to change things that you want to change. You can set up access control for all of this. So very flexible that way. So the next extension I'm talking about is TJ Vendor. So this powers most of our multi-vendor marketplace products. So right now, JGive and JTicketing already use it. Shika and Quick2Cart will have it soon. So as a multi-vendor ecosystem, we need to do a lot of things, right? So we need to manage vendors who are the people who are going to come into the ecosystem and start selling. They might be selling different things. So through Quick2Cart, they sell products. In JTicketing, they sell events. Through JGive, they're doing campaigns. Through Shika, they are doing courses. And whatever they're doing, typically there is a split payment kind of a scenario that as a marketplace, there is some fee that the admin needs to charge. And what this TJ vendor system does is lets us manage the vendor entities, lets us manage what are the fees set per vendor. So you can set global fees, you can set product specific fees. So you can have a different fee for e-commerce, for products, for events, for campaigns, courses. And you can also override it on a vendor level or let's say on a user group level eventually. And all this fee management is actually also done in TJ vendors. So there is a wallet that each vendor gets where all the incomings are stored in the wallet, and it also manages the payouts. And if you are working with something like Stripe Connect, which we integrate through a partner, that I think we are reworking that integration right now, you can also do automated split payments. So all of this infrastructure, we have not built again in any of our extensions. It's the common TJ vendor extension that provides it. And of course, we are welcoming anyone else who wants to use it as well. It's out there in our GitHub. You're welcome to start using it. So some other things, I think Ashwin talked about this one. There is a search indexer product that we have, which allows you to configure a search indexer, which will configure the indexes and push that data into a Solr or Elasticsearch or Algolia adapter. And then we also have a MySQL local adapter if you don't want to use an external system. The next one I have here is JLike. So this is a very powerful extension. This used to be a commercial extension, but we are making it free. So what it right now powers is that it powers a lot of content interaction. So across all our extensions, we have reviews and ratings, labels, the ability to do assignments and goals, comments, likes, dislikes, set to-dos against content, get reminders about those, recommend content to your peers, take notes against content, as well as construct content into paths. So this is a very powerful extension. Was built as one of the simplest extensions we have. In fact, it was taken over from a different extension provider, and we completely rewrote it eventually. And this is probably a very small but extremely powerful extension that can do a lot of content interactions. And this powers these features in almost all our vertical extensions today. So it started as a vertical extension, but now it almost feels like it's a horizontal extension because it's kind of helping us deliver all this in all our products. So the next few slides I have is for JLike paths. So this is a little complicated, so I won't really get into it. But the idea about JLike paths is that you can construct different contents into paths. So this will eventually power learning paths inside Shika. It can also be used to create to-do lists where you can say that, once you watch, let's say, N1 content and then you watch N2 content, then N4 and N5 will open up for you. So you can do things like that. We use it to connect forms. We've used it in very, very different. So some examples here, which is you can have a path of nodes and paths of paths. I will share this deck, but as I said, this is a little technical and we are short of time, so I won't go too deep into this. But this is an example application workflow on a education portal that we have powered using UCM and paths. So each node in this content interaction is a form, and this path is actually constructed using JLike. So it effectively serves as a glue where you want to take users through a certain journey. And that journey could be watching content, it could be filling forms, it could be anything you want. So another very interesting product, typically a little more complicated than most, but once you get it, it can be used in a variety of scenarios. And then there's a lot more that I wasn't able to cover really. So there's multi-agencies that I talked about. There is a common payments API for Joomla that we're maintaining. Again, all our products and a few other extension developers are also using it. There is JMail Alerts, which is an email digest system that you can use to send weekly, daily, monthly digests to your users. There is a universal importer system. There is an activity system. There is a cluster system. So all of this is on our GitHub. I'm not going to go too deep. So I think if we have any questions, we could take them now. This is my last slide, I believe. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Parth. It sounds as if you've got a team of 70, 74, 75 people now.
Yeah.
And it sounds as if to take on the projects that you want to take on the projects with the size and the scale of the ones that you're completing, you've almost built your own enterprise layer on top of Joomla. You've built your own report system. You've built your own login system now. You've built your own layer that works with all your extensions. It's an enormous undertaking by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and luckily we have got the chance to work with a lot of clients who have supported creating these as infrastructure extensions. Because when you're creating somebody for someone, there's always the question of IP, right? And luckily, we have been able to convince that most of these things are really generic use that anybody could use, and that way they don't have to, pay a large cost to maintaining the project. They can only, they only have to own up on their IP, which usually is a very small slice in any project. And this infrastructure pyramid kind of enables that to be successful. So the spirit of open source strategy has really worked well for us, allowed us to roll out so many products, and kind of hopefully more people in the Joomla community will take them up as well. And that's what gives us an edge in a lot of times, Steve, in these big projects that we do, that we can actually deliver much faster because we have all this that we can kind of bring with us to the table.
So if someone is listening to us talk now, or maybe they're watching the video, and maybe they work for an agency and they're delivering solutions for customers, are the extensions that you talk about on your GitHub account ones that agencies can download and use to more quickly deliver solutions for their customers?
Absolutely. That's the goal. We have open sourced all this code mainly with that intent that Joomla can be used more in the enterprise space. More bigger agencies will look to it to deliver bigger projects. Because at the end of the day, that all helps our ecosystem. And that's the reason all this is out on GitHub, so that more people can come to it, take it, fork it, and contribute back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Parth. That was a fascinating talk. And I think I'm going to point some of our Joomla Shack developers to some of your extensions and say, hey, we could take a look and learn from some of what Parth and his team are doing.
Oh, please do. Would be great to have you on board.
Awesome. Do we have any questions for Parth from the audience? Okay, one question from Daweed again. If you take the COM API, he's wondering how long and how difficult it would be to develop a mobile app based on that COM API.
Right. So, David, I think to answer that question, we would need to know what the mobile app does, right? Because the mobile app could be something as simple as a newsreader application. And that kind of an application you can spin up in 3-4 days if you have a Joomla site with all the content and COM API on top of it. That won't be very complicated. But obviously, if it's a more complicated application like a full-blown social network, that would take more time. But what I would say basically is that if you're looking at developing a mobile app, make sure that you're using a backend that supports APIs. If it's Joomla, make sure it's got extensions that have their own APIs, or you can use COM APIs to develop the API layer. and then you'll be on your way to develop a mobile application. And the other advice I would have there is look at using cross-platform frameworks so that you don't have to maintain different code bases for Angular and and on Android and iOS, unless you need some very native functionality. Because nowadays cross-platform frameworks are very powerful and will give you the almost the similar experience as a native application. So that's another advice. But how long is so much a function of what you want to build? So no straight answer there, I'm afraid.
Cool. Well, Parth, it's been a pleasure to hear from you and Ashwin to help kick off the Joomla Shack conference along with Nicholas from Akiba. Thank you so much.